You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
This Week in Pharmacy, April 17th, 2026. We have 4 interviews for you today. It's a big one. Starting out with Allison Arant, a rant. I'm on a rant right now on specialty pharmacy, Assembia 2026. I'm excited it's coming. And we're going to go over to Chris Antipas, to Dr. Antipas, and Ted Mills with Perigon. Then we're going to talk with John Nosta, my digital health godfather. He's graduated to large language models, but the philosophy of artificial intelligence. We're going to be talking about his book. It's going to be great. And then finally, Dr. Crute, Andy Crute, is coming in. He's going to be talking about psychedelics. What's the future of psychedelics and pharmacists? You're not going to want to miss today's This Week in Pharmacy. Welcome to This Week in Pharmacy. I am your host of TWIRx. We are TWIRxing. It's Friday. It's a great day to be Friday. I need a weekend. I need to get prepared for the Super Bowl of specialty pharmacy coming up. The Assembia 2026, the Access to Pharmacy, Access to Specialty Pharmacy. One of my most favorite conferences of the year. If you're going, please take time to reach out to me. Let me know that you're there. Get involved in our press coverage. I absolutely love talking with people in specialty pharmacy and just game changers. I love people who are passionate about changing things and making things better. And that's why I'm excited to have Perigon Health today on the show. And today's TWIRx episode is brought to you by Perigon Pharmacy 360, and a shout out to Clearway Health. I don't know if anybody saw my videos drinking my new Clearway Health drink. We will have some Clearway Health aluminum container drinks. These things are awesome. Like I said, it tasted a lot like Fresca, but absolutely love what they're doing. Can't wait to talk with Allison Arant. And it's an exciting time in pharmacy. I think that the news upcoming and the expansion of specialty, the expansion of pharmacy consultants, I think this is a big move for our pharmacy industry, and I see specialties coming out of pharmacist consulting on different things that isn't getting enough attention. At the Assembia event, it's going to be AI and specialty pharmacy, the impact of that very specifically, about how AI is impacting workflow, technology, drug development. Then we're going to be talking about cell and gene therapy. We're going to be talking about women's health. Can't wait to the event. Excited about the event. Excited about the future of specialty pharmacy. We're kind honed into that today. However, we have TWIRx news that I really want to jump into because first out, the FDA, according to JD Supra, the FDA announced it will remove 12 peptide bulk drug substances from Category 2 of the Section 503A compounding list after their nominations were withdrawn. It goes on to say that the agency also scheduled Pharmacy Compounding Advisor Committee meetings for July 23rd through 24th this summer, 2026, and again before the end of February 2027 to consider whether these peptides should be added to the 503A bulk list. It goes on to say the important takeaway for compounders is that removal from Category 2 does not automatically authorize compounding, so pharmacies still face regulatory risk until the FDA takes further action. I'd like to hear from our compounding pharmacist experts on this. I'd like to do a follow-up, so shout out to the APC, Scott Bruner and his team, keeping us all safe in the pharmacy compounding sector. But you will find this information on JD Supra. Once again, JD Supra, SUPRA, supra.com. The news just came out this week in pharmacy. Hey, next up, Xanax maker recalls a batch of the common anxiety drug. Big news out of the Seattle Times reporting. This is big news for mental health. Also, I can only imagine what pharmacists are going through in some of the issues that this is going to cause and the strife that it's going to cause and the hyperboil and hyperbole that it's going to cause. A recalled batch of Xanax XR is drawing attention nationwide. Reporting is tied to the Seattle Times story to confirm by additional information regarding the FDA classified a Class 2 recall for Xanax XR 3 milligram tablets in 60 count bottles. It even gives the lot. I'm going to put this in our show notes. It's lot 8177156. That's 8177156. After the product failed dissolution specifications. The recall product was distributed nationwide by Viatris Specialty LLC, and pharmacists are being advised to identify and quarantine affected inventory while warning patients not to abruptly discontinue benzodiazepine therapy without clinical guidance. Something for pharmacists to be aware of. I'm sure you already know. And it's big news. We've heard it through the Instagramosphere and being paying attention. I learned so much from social media, from credible sources. Most of my sources on social media are pharmacists, but to be able to listen to some news story from a pharmacist perspective is really special, and then to be able to trust that source is really special. Hey, our last story comes from Pharmacy Times. Pharmacy 50 influencer, the winner of the last year's Pharmacy 50 most influential doctor, Nadia Ahmad. She's making waves in pharmacy. It all started with her concern with her patients specifically and how she's dialing in. She is a pharmacist for Walgreens. Let's listen in.
In United States, about 90% of Americans live within 5 miles of a community pharmacy, and studies shows that patients often see their pharmacist far more frequently than their primary care providers. And because of that accessibility, pharmacists are often the first healthcare professionals patients turn to when something unexpected happens, including wound care situations. In my practice as a community pharmacy, I see this very often.
So shout out to Nadia and her work. Drug Topics is highlighting the growing role, of community pharmacy in wound care. Absolutely makes sense. You're seeing patients all the time. You're seeing people all the time, emphasizing that pharmacies can serve as an accessible first stop for patients with everyday wounds. This piece really drives into the ability to become more wound care expert and having that expertise, answering a lot of questions for OTC care, as well as anything that's needed in the prescription realm and even compounding. It's just another example of pharmacy's expanding role in frontline clinical value, and the business of pharmacy, and how our community pharmacies can step up, our independents can step up and start providing different services, and hopefully tie that back into more cash-based systems, or something that you can work with the patient and step outside of the clutch of the PBM per se. But services are going to definitely increase in our pharmacies, especially those places that are pharmacy deserts. We just don't have enough coverage. Hey, Clearway Health coming up next, right after this special message from our sponsor.
As frontline healthcare providers, pharmacists like you understand the importance of personalized care, especially in acute pain management. Ural Pharma is dedicated to providing high-quality, generic products tailored to meet your patients' needs. The company aims to serve a diverse range of patient populations, including athletes recovering from intense training, weekend warriors managing minor injuries, and those seeking a practical and mess-free option for acute pain management. Keep Ural in your toolbox of pain management options and join the ranks of pharmacists leading the way in personalized care. To learn more about Ural Pharma and its products, including full prescribing information, boxed warnings, and important safety information, visit uralpharma.com. That's YARAL pharma.com, and connect with them on LinkedIn.
Hey, welcome back to This Week in Pharmacy. This Week in Pharmacy is hot this week. There's so much going on. I wanted to say thank you so much to Chris for coming down to the studio from, I think, South Hills, Estes Pharmacy area. It's probably like a 45-minute drive. It's my dream to build a studio north of Jupiter, Florida. If you guys know where Jupiter is, my family lives up in Vero Beach. I want a studio on A1A, which is right on the coast, and we'll have to have some TWIRx parties there too. I guarantee it. Hey, I'm throwing a party here at TWIRx today because this next segment is literally happening this week in pharmacy on Wednesday of This Week in Pharmacy. MedCenter Health partners with Clearway Health to establish a specialty pharmacy program. The stock of Fresca is going to go up this week because of that partnership. Just kidding, a reference to our Instagram and Fresca. It's probably my favorite drink right now. And I was drinking out of my Clearway Health mug and absolutely love the mug. And I want to welcome back my friend from Clearway Health, Allison Arant. It is so good to have you back on TWIRx.
Hey, Todd. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's good to see you. Good to be back. Last time you were here was December of 2025, and all of a sudden we blink, and now it's second quarter of 2026. It's almost time for Assembia. Crazy fast. I don't understand what's going on. Why time seems like it's speeding up.
Crazy fast. If time goes by that fast and you have your Vero Beach studio, next time I'm here, I will happily come visit you there.
Please, that would be so much fun. Hey, congratulations on this week in pharmacy and the success that that you're having. And what I'm most excited about is these rural areas of America which are suffering with pharmacy desert pressures, and there's no access to care. Now we come to a hospital system and we insert a designed program to pull out the needs of that community through that hospital system. I absolutely love this story. I'm always leaning towards the independent pharmacist out there, also the independent health systems that are just trying to serve their community. And you guys step in as the specialists in specialty pharmacy. So share with our listeners about that.
Thank you. Thanks for the congrats. We are so excited to announce our partnership with MedCenter Health, but I have to say it's truly congratulations to MedCenter Health for choosing to build a specialty pharmacy program to support their patients and their care teams and their communities. We are thrilled that they chose Clearway Health as their partner. They are in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and have done incredible work there. They're actually celebrating their 100-year anniversary this year in 2026. And so they've been serving Bowling Green and the surrounding areas for a century, and we are thrilled to go into the next century offering specialty pharmacy services to them. They have long provided inpatient pharmacy services and some retail services, but had never made the jump into specialty. And they realized over the last several years, there is just incredible opportunity to serve their patients better, to provide better services to their clinicians, and then to provide a really strong financial engine for the system through specialty pharmacy. So they had a lot of considerations when they were choosing a partner, and truly grateful that they chose Clearway Health, and commend them for their decision to explore specialty pharmacy.
It makes sense. Back to when Chris was here, just left, he and I were talking about the trust that's built in complex disease states, and how if you had your hospital system, or you're in the hospital system, you're in therapy, and then all of a sudden now it's time to start your treatment in your specialty medication, to the patient, it still feels like that they're part of their local hospital. It still feels like I know my physician and I know other people that are supporting me. There's an element in the ecosystem of care, the psychology of care, the mental health of care. I think this is a huge win for Bowling Green and keeping that local feel for the patients.
You're exactly right. We talk so much about the impact that a specialty therapy has on a patient, whether it's a therapy that they have been on for weeks or months or years, or whether it's a new diagnosis that they're hearing for the first time and they're starting a therapy journey that will truly be life-changing or life-saving. We actually, a few weeks ago, were together as a leadership team at Clearway Health and had a Pay It Forward event where we put together kits that MedCenter Health will provide to their oncology patients when they have a new diagnosis and are starting a new specialty therapy. And it was this moment of realizing that you were providing service and a care to a patient who could have just had the worst day or the hardest news of their life. And so if we can be a partner to a patient and a care team and the care providers in that scenario, it is an incredible honor. And so, you talk about the impact that it has on patients. When a hospital or a health system provides specialty pharmacy services in an environment where a patient is already comfortable and confident and familiar receiving care, there is no better person to serve that patient in the health system where they're used to receiving care. So truly a great opportunity from a patient care perspective and from a market share perspective for the hospital, where they're able to protect and defend market share that is becoming a lot more saturated, especially in the specialty pharmacy space.
If you're listening, you are working in health system, you are working on the hospital systems, you're going to Assembia, you're exploring what's out there in specialty. You may be making decisions. Are we going to take on the responsibility of building out a specialty pharmacy, or are we partnering with an organization Allison and your team are going to be there. You're going to be almost like a Mission Impossible secret agents floating around the event, scheduling the one-on-ones and digging into those conversations to help come to those decisions. Asembia is a special time. It's a special time. It's the Super Bowl of specialty pharmacy. It's bringing all of these minds together and the insights together. But for me, I really like the business aspect of being able to shake a hand of somebody this age of digital and constantly Zooming with each other. But to be able to physically get together with each other, it's such a special time. It's one of my favorite events every year.
It's a great event. We're excited to be there. And, you talk about the networking. I think so often, especially when you think about the pharmacy space, there are so many verticals, there are so many solutions. We stretch from the entrance of AI and how it powers technology. We think about innovative spaces that have been long known, but continue to do incredible work in spaces like gene and cell therapy. And you think about the health systems who are figuring out how to balance all of that. When you think about the partners, the folks like Clearway Health, it's incumbent upon us to think about ways that we build partnerships with other partners in the space so that we are truly providing the best kind of connected service for hospitals. So a lot of opportunity at Asembia. We're really looking forward to being there.
Allison, you just hit on all three of our major themes covering the event. I want the listeners to also participate. If you want to sign up for a press insight quote, you're more than welcome to. I'll put a show in the show notes. I'll put a link where you can actually get your time scheduled. But you mentioned women's health, you mentioned cell and gene therapy, and you mentioned AI in pharmacy, AI's impact on specialty pharmacy. All three of these, Clearway Health has connections into that. Kind of talk to me about the women's health and in your experience, what have you seen in the advancement of things that are happening specifically in the uterus, or people struggling with getting pregnant, or going through menopause, or what aspects of women's health has really stuck out to you lately in it being advanced and us getting more attention around it?
Yeah, I will say bravo to all advancements being made in women's health, a space where we have long needed modernization and ways that we're just learning and doing better. And so I'll start by saying that from a specialty pharmacy lens, if you look at the drug pipeline, I'm incredibly excited to sit in on the sessions coming up here at Asembia in a few weeks to really hear about the new novel therapies that are coming out, especially in the women's space. But for specialty pharmacy, I do not think women's services is often a service line that hits the top. We think oncology, rheumatology, derm, the ones that should be at the top. And we have women's health and have had a lot of success when we thought about specialty drugs in the way of access. It is not always about cost, though it's certainly a key driver. It's also about access. And when you think about access to therapies that are needed for reproductive therapy, as an example, we have built programs inside of reproductive clinics where we are helping women and families access and afford medication that are complex and that are expensive, that often are not covered by, payer commercial plans. And so we are helping to enable patients to access that kind of care, especially in the reproductive space. And so I would say, as folks are sitting at Asembia and thinking about places where specialty pharmacy fits in your organization, don't overlook women's health, the OBGYN clinics, especially in the reproductive therapy services, and think about ways that specialty pharmacy can be an extension of that.
That is special in and of itself, and therein lies the sweet sauce of it. The pharmacist that has the experience, the team that surrounds the pharmacist that has the experience, that understands the prior authorization hurdles right from the get-go. They're like, oh, this NDC is definitely going to trigger this. We're prepared for it so that we get the medication started faster, so that we get over the potential hurdles of the way PBMs kind of do things and sometimes muck things up and keeping people on therapy because of where the payment's coming from, follow-up, and then of course all the other factors like getting people to their doctor's appointments, and like there's just so much more to it. So that's why I love when we come together and we're able to talk with each other, but ask questions of each other. It's not just showing up and throwing up. It's like, hey, here's what this last session was about. I'm having challenges as a business organization, really scaling and getting more coverage in places where, like you said, as we started out, pharmacy deserts are eating away at the healthcare available. Sometimes pharmacy is the only healthcare service in 20 miles of a community that doesn't have public health transportation or doesn't have public transportation. So when you think of the challenges, we're all meeting up at Assembia. Is there anything that sticks out, Allison, that you're like, we should really hammer more on this issue because of you seeing it through the data that you guys, the powerful data that you're collecting and the insights that you understand? Like, what is that? What is that theme that we need more attention on?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a lot of the things that you mentioned that probably connect together into this common theme of helping hospitals and health systems have the enablement to provide the service in their local community. And I think we all play a part in that. You know, you've mentioned pharmacy deserts, you've talked about competitive environments for hospitals to function in. One of the things that we think about so often is kind of a combination of all of those things, plus some of the social determinants of health concepts that you mentioned. So let's first take pharmacy deserts. If you think about the definition of a pharmacy desert in a suburban area, it is not having a pharmacy within 5 miles of where you live. In a rural area, it's not having a pharmacy within 10 miles of where you live. But then you take that a step further and say, even if there's a pharmacy within that mile radius, is there access? Is there transportation? Is there the ability to travel? And so you take those compounding challenges, and then you look at health systems who are facing increasing pressures, regulatory, financial pressures, compliance pressures, and you look at decisions that are being made oftentimes through retail, big box chains and pharmacies who are choosing to close their doors. But a hospital doesn't choose to close their doors when their margins are scarce or thin. And so you have hospitals who are truly the definition of doing more with less, providing care to communities of people who rely on it desperately in a more challenging environment. And so what we think about solving for is how do we help hospitals provide a service line that is going to care for those patients and create financial transformation so that they can continue to offer services to the community who needs it. The other part of that is just the increasing competitive pressure that we're seeing in healthcare through so much vertical consolidation. We for many years have seen non-traditional entrants into the hospital markets where maybe you have payers, you have retail chains, you have urgent care chains who are coming in and competing for business that hospitals have long been the providers of. And so I think we have to step back and think, how do we equip the hospitals to do the care that they're there to provide without creating a more complex competitive environment where it becomes more difficult for them to do that life-changing, life-saving work. So, you know, there's a lot of underpinnings of that. You have to have the data. You have to understand the opportunity. You have to understand the risk, you know, and have the propensity to do the work that matters. And then I think about the advocates and the folks who are in the space who are really helping to support these hospitals and the work that they're doing. So to the folks who are listening, who are not on the hospital health system side, I would say figure out how to do your part. Don't make it harder. And for the hospitals and health systems, I would say look for the helpers and the experts who can help you do that hard work because we're here.
Thank you for saying that. And it doesn't have to be a competitive situation. It can be, hey, we're doing this together for the betterment of access to care within this community that we know is suffering because your local independent community pharmacy just closed, and then your two chain pharmacies, one of them has closed or another has closed. Like, this is happening all across the country. It's everybody knows within pharmacy what the pinch is and what it feels like. But the solution is coming together. It's working together. It's using each other's strengths. That's why we use podcasting and public relation campaigns, because it's like, hey, you might not have read the press release, but you're tuned into TWIRx today, and now you know that there's another hospital system that's now been empowered by an expert organization who really understands workflow and specialty and all of the intricacies. There's so many like tiny little nicks and crannies that or what you can get stuck on from preventing care to flow. Later on the show today, John Nosta comes back. He's been I called him my digital health godfather 10 years ago, but he's really evolved to large language models and how to leverage clinical data into an AI machine that really knows how to pull out specific things. One of the other three segments of Assembia for us is going to be covering how does AI impact specialty specifically. So share with our listeners your experience in leveraging artificial intelligence in the specialty pharmacy space.
I think there is a tremendous amount of opportunity to use it in the right and productive ways to power specialty pharmacy. I think some of the areas are even things like with benefits investigation or patient assistance programs where we're looking for financial assistance for patients, really using those opportunities for AI as ways to power better workflows so that the liaisons and the caregivers are able to spend more time with the patient and have AI work in a supportive role. And I think that's really consistent with the way that Clearway Health approaches our philosophy on technology. We are a service organization that's powered by technology. So first, we have the people who are doing the work on the front lines, caring for the patient, supporting the providers and the clinicians and the care teams. And then you have Charter, which is our proprietary software that works as a pharmacy management system in the background, really doing the work that no other technology is doing. It's not a replacement of an EHR. It's not a replacement of a dispensing system, but really an overlay and filling a gap that is otherwise created in the technology components of that care continuum. And so I think there are many points of that patient journey where AI has a role. And so I think looking more into those areas like the benefits, the insurance work, the prior authorization work that is an incredible burden, and certainly the financial assistance are places to get started. And then, I'm interested to hear more later about the work, especially in the clinical spaces where AI is powering even things like trials and work that is happening to continue to drive the work in the drug pipeline.
Allison, so excited that we're going to get to spend some time together in 2 weeks at the Super Bowl of Specialty Pharmacy, Assembia 2026. We have several segments of the show that Clearway Health is going to be helping to draw out some of the little bit deeper into some of the issues that we're talking about. I'm excited to see you in person, get some pictures. Wish we had some time to do something fun. It's so funny. Like I'll have relatives of mine who my brother is an electrician, for example, and when I'm traveling, he's like, it's so nice that you get to go to all these places. And I'm like, sometimes I see the inside of an airport, I see the Uber, I see the conference hall, I see my room, possibly a restaurant, and then I see the airport again. And it's like, I never get to really get out there. I know there's ATV riding in Las Vegas. I know that there's things I could be doing. And I'm like, I'm not gonna get to see any of it.
But you could, lots to choose from, but there's lots in Vegas. There will be lots at Assembia. I'm really excited to see you too.
Hey, I want to thank Clearway Health for being our press support sponsor for the event. We're so excited to be working with you. Get your mug, get your metal Clearway Health aluminum mug. I love that. I love my mug. I left it upstairs before we started recording. Otherwise, I'd have been sipping my Fresca here, talking with you.
That is great. Well, I really appreciate your partnership. Thanks for having me, and I will see you very soon.
We'll see you soon. Stay tuned for a great interview with Dr. John Nosta coming up on TWIRx. Hey, welcome back to This Week in Pharmacy. It is a interesting week. We are preparing for Assembly, as we've said. I want to just emphasize, reach out to me if you're going to the Super Bowl of a specialty pharmacy, 27th, I think. Yeah, April 27th through 29th. Hey, listen, there is a book out that I have ordered. I just put my order in. My book's supposed to be here on Saturday. There'll be some great reading for Sunday. I love reading on Sundays. The Borrow Mind, Reclaiming Human Thought in the Age of AI by John Nosta. My special friend, one of the first big names that came to the Pharmacy Podcast Network years ago. Want to welcome back John Nosta.
I am back in, right? Okay.
Yeah.
What a pleasure to be here. We go back a long, long time, Todd. I remember the golden age of podcasting and some of the things that you've been doing, and see the evolution of your contribution to pharmacy, to medicine. It's been amazing watching you. So thanks again, and it's great to be back.
It's great to have you back. I'll never forget the email that I wasn't sure where it was going to go and if I was going to get a response, and you responded, I think, the same day, and you're like, yeah, I'll be on your podcast. And I was just blown away. And it was pretty cool. So you've taught me a lot. You introduced me to, you've been an incredible branch in the age, in the evolution of my career. You've introduced me to my dear friend, our dear friend, Gil Bash with Finn Partners. We're going to be interviewing him later today on his new book. And things are happening, meaning I understand when I came into pharmacy in healthcare 2004, we were entering the age of SQL Server. You were able to access data in ways you never did before. People were going nuts. It was wonderful. Now we're in this, I feel like we're in a whole new season and cycle because of what's happening with the implementation and leverage of AI. And things that you bring to mind are much more, instead of the sectors of pharmacy who pay attention, we got specialty who's building out systems. We're going to be talking about that at Assembia. We got health systems that treat things differently because it's EHR driven. So you kind of slow everybody down with this book, and you explore what happens when human thought takes place in the presence of systems that generate fluent language, but they don't understand. There's no responsibility. That reminds me of my favorite movie line, one of my favorites, that is with great power comes great responsibility. John, talk to our listeners and open up about where this book takes us.
With great power. Let's just talk about those first three words. In today's world, we often talk about great power in the context of AI as being the powerful domain. The computer is more and more powerful. We scale it. It has more parameters. It has a dimensionalization that actually becomes less clear. In essence, I have a V6 Hemi engine, right? I mean, you probably know what that means, but most people will say Hemi and like, what? Hemi? You know, obviously it's a hemispherical piston head, or even things like rack and pinion steering. You know, cars have rack and pinion steering, but nobody knows what the pinion is, right? It just sounds good. And what we're moving into is this hyper technology domain where we've got bits and bytes and parameters and aspects of AI that is sort of defining power. But to me, I think that the ultimate power that we need to understand is the power of the human. Mm-hmm. And the book started off, actually, it's an interesting story. The book started off a year or so ago, and the title was The Cognitive Age. I probably even talked to you a little bit about it, Sean. We started with this idea of Gutenberg unlocked words with the printing press, and then the internet came along with Google and unlocked facts. And that was where we kind of wallowed for many years in pharmacy and medicine, that we had access to a lot of information, but the information was not always connected. The word interoperability came up a lot, the word, the digital age and digital transformation. But while Gutenberg unlocked words and the internet unlocked facts in a kind of cold-hearted transactional way, what AI did, particularly large language models, is they unlocked thought. And that's a really freaky thing when you think about it, because thought is something that's intrinsically human. So here I am writing this book, cobbling it together based upon a lot of my writing in psychology today. And I realized that there's something more important going on here. And it certainly touched on these issues of hallucinations, of the sycophantic nature of large language models, where they speak to us in ways that satisfy our own personal needs and are almost corrupting in a certain way. So I came full stop. I said, wait, something is more important here. I don't want to write another book about hooray for AI. Everybody's writing those books today. How technology will change life, how technology will change medicine. To me, it came down to something much more important. How will technology change the way I think? Because what AI is doing for me is something very, very curious. It's getting to the answer very quickly. It's getting from A to B. Write a discharge summary. Tell me the drug-drug interactions of amiodarone with a patient who's on concomitant meds, right? These are often complicated clinical dynamics, but the information comes at us very, very quickly. In essence, we get from point A to point B in an instant. But what lives between point A and point B?
Thought.
Error, failure. Perhaps the most interesting word for me is imagination. So what happens when we get the answer? And the answer is served up in a way that sounds like it's the chief of medicine answering the question. Pursuant to your query about amiodarone with respect to corneal microdeposits and hepatotoxicity, it already sounds good, right? It sounds coherent. And to me, this was a can of worms. This is a big deal. So that's how the book was born. The book was, okay, AI, cool stuff, but something else is going on here. So for me, the book has three parts. One is the promise. And that's what we've been talking about for years now. The promise of AI is undeniable. The clinical application of AI is undeniable. The brilliance of AI from a computational perspective is undeniable. But that's only part of the story. There's the promise, then there's the peril. And those are the issues that come out of AI when we decide to offload our cognition to a machine, or we listen to a machine that sounds like it has tremendous authority. And the third part of the book is the path. So how the heck do we get out of this? How do we build a path? And that's, in essence, that's where we started. So in it is a lot of interesting theories. There's a little bit of philosophy. There's a little bit of Dostoevsky. There's a little bit of John Nosta. Because in the book, right, in the middle of the book, there's a soul. And even the cover is flat silhouette of a face. The cover is not computer-generated art. I don't want it to be computer-generated art. In fact, the book is not just sort of this hyper intellectualization driven by large language models. It really has the bumps and the errors and the contradictions and the uncertainty of the human condition. That's what the path to A and B is. And in medicine, boy, that's really critical. When when a patient comes to you at the pharmacy and they ask you a question about drug X or drug Y or something, you look at the scenario, you see how they're standing, you interpret the way they ask the question. In other words, the path from A to B is a little bit more complex. And if anything, it's humanistic. So for me, the book, The Borrowed Mind, the subhead kind of says it all. Reclaiming thought, reclaiming human thought in the age of AI. Right? We have to remember that that we are the owners of the thought. And along that path, I've gone down very, very interesting ways of kind of how do we look at AI? AI. A lot of people talk about this transhuman mumbo jumbo that we're just going to make AI more like humans or humans more like AI, and we're going to end up with this sort of Terminator style thing, whatever it is. Doesn't have to be a monster. It could be just a box on a wall in the pharmacy storeroom, you know? And so I've come up with some interesting perspectives on that to try to help people understand how AI works, number one, and how AI works with us humans. So we could dig deep on that a little bit. I know we're just going to kind of do a cursory overview today, Todd, but
Yeah.
you know, once you hit the John Nosta play button, he doesn't shut up. So
No, we're going to have you back. We're going to dig into, I want to split it into 3 interviews. I want to take the book apart and stick to each of your sections and kind of dig a little bit deeper. And I think with a 30-minute run that's dedicated just to this, I think it'll be different and it'll really allow our listeners to kind of dig in, because I'd like our listeners to go get this book and maybe do this along with us and really take time to
that would be.
Now, so I'm a big, you know this, we've nerded out before. So I'm a big science fiction fan. I love time travel's my favorite genre within science fiction. The Matrix had little bits of that because of Neo's ability to manipulate the code that he could, you know, be a part of and control from that programmer's perspective. So, all right, I'm a Gen Xer. You're a Gen Xer. You know, I was born in.
I'm a boomer.
You're a boomer. I thought you were there. See, that's a compliment because
but I'm on the edge, right? So okay, I can live in the Gen X.
Yeah. So anyway, so you and I experienced the difference in our lives of what the phone transformed from into and helped us communicate in different ways and better. And I remember when I had my first very long 4-year love crush, a very innocent relationship. I was on the phone as much as possible because I lived out in the country, and I knew that my personality was changing based on growing and understanding what love means and all that fun stuff. And then I'd write her poetry and mail her snail mail letters that she would get, you know, 3 days after I mailed them. All right. So fast forward, we've experienced the internet. We've experienced data processing. We've experienced so many of these things. The point that you made, that you said, we're getting to the answers faster. The evil of AI, in my mind, is not science fiction. It's not the make-believe-ish terrors of AI. AI's destruction or partial destruction of where humanity has been is exactly what you're saying, where we don't have to think our ways through to conclusions. And what's going to happen when our 18-year-olds right now today going into college will find a way to not have to exercise their minds the way that we did, because we had to do things differently to come to conclusions in the way that we learned. And I think, let's fast forward 50 years. I probably won't be here anymore. You probably won't be here anymore, but maybe we will. It'd be fun. Yeah, actually, I could be. I'll only be in my 90s. So
you might.
All right. So when that happens 50 years from today, the generations who have been born into the cell phone, who have been born into the iPad, who have now been born into AI, I think it's going to be crippling based on some of the stats that we've seen come out about Gen X. And they're saying that their outcomes are not as promising as what their parents were. So kind of dig into that side of it, where your word responsibility stood out to me in the description of this book. And that is exactly what I'm saying. As a human culture, as psychologists, as people that are teachers, that are teaching children, they have a responsibility to teach children the dangers of AI and what it could do to the human mind.
A lot of interesting words that you use there: destruction, danger, you know, and I'm going to try to back into this. Number one, I can cook you dinner with a knife, or I could stab you with a knife. So again, you know, how do you put that into some contextual dynamic, right? And how do you put it in context? So that's a question in of itself. The other question is, the knife or the screwdriver or the hammer, those are tools. and I can put down the tool and walk away. And we often refer to AI, maybe back in the day before large language models, but we refer to AI as a tool. And people will say, clinicians will say, well, it's how you use it. And I would argue that it's a little bit more complicated in today's world, because while I can put that hammer down and walk away, can I unthink a thought I shared with a large language model? That's what's so interesting to me. Now what happens? Okay, I think there's really two basic issues here. One is the slippery slope of deferred cognition. For example, misinterpreting fluency as understanding. We all know those people. Todd, we see them all the time in conventions. I'm not going to mention names, but you know these guys who walk around, talk a mile a minute, but don't say anything. Mm-hmm. Yet they get speakers' positions at conventions because they are glib. Do they say anything new? No, they mix up the language and say a lot of mumbo jumbo. LLMs are not just crafting just a mishmash of information. They're creating it in a coherent way that sounds great, that makes a lot of sense. And that I think that's one thing that happens. The second thing that happens is that we begin to develop a tolerance of friction. Now, what the heck does that mean? One of the joys of life is thinking. It's been said time and time again. You probably have had the bumper sticker on your car at one point or another, Todd. It's not the destination, but it's the journey. Yep. The destination is almost a byproduct of the journey. Our lives are built upon our stumbles, our falls, our contradictions. What happens when we misinterpret? What happens when we don't understand that the friction is good? So that's another big idea, big deal that's happening, is that, you know what, I don't want to, do I have to really write that discharge summary? Oh, brother. You know what, I'll just have ChatGPT do it. Do I have to really write that email about the raise I want? I'll just have ChatGPT do it. I'll go the easy path. And the easy path is not only the best path, it's a precarious path, because what we're doing is not only outsourcing cognition, right? We're outsourcing discernment. Wow. So do I trust the machine to read that EKG and say if someone has an MI or not and discharge them from the emergency room? I don't know. So, it's very, very problematic for us. And we develop a sense of overconfidence from this. Now, we all know people who maybe they don't respond to their posts on social media in their own voice. They respond with what ChatGPT tells them. And they sound like an expert, right? But you could almost read it and that it has a certain intellectual heft that feels contrived. It feels like bullshit, to use the language. And that term has been used in some peer-reviewed papers as to define the kind of engagement. So all this stuff happens, and it happens really, really fast. There's a paper, an article I just published in Psychology Today that compares the 10,000 hours we need to establish mastery. Remember Malcolm Gladwell wrote about that? There was 10,000 hours of sort of cognitive mastery. To learn to play the violin, you have to put in 10,000 hours of practice. Interestingly, on the health side, we needed 10,000 steps, right, to stay healthy. Funny how those two numbers came up. But recently, what I found is that you need 10,000 hours to establish some level of mastery, but you need 10 minutes to experience the cognitive decline we see from AI. Well, that's startling. I don't want to drill down too deeply on that, but basically what they did is they gave people a test, and they answered questions, and they had people use AI, an LLM, in the margin of the test to help them. Who did better? The group who used AI did better. They did about an 80, 85, and the group without the AI did about a 75 or so. Then suddenly they turned off the AI to one group, and their performance went down in as little as 10 minutes. They found they couldn't answer the questions. In fact, they gave up more quickly. Isn't that interesting? That's not even a cognitive area, but that's sort of the idea that, well, I'm losing my consciousness, my confidence. I don't want to do this. So for me, it comes back to, what do we do? How do we manage this? Number one, we have to recognize what we're doing, because sometimes we don't even recognize the cognitive laziness of AI. You know, it just becomes second nature. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, cognitive offloading may provide us the opportunity to do cognitive onloading. So, okay, I don't know what 1,6-fructose diphosphate is in the Krebs cycle. Okay, my pharmacy professor is probably going to yell at me and say, you should remember that. But in the real world, maybe knowing that esoteric fact, that cognitive heavy lifting, can be shifted. So again, to me, the promise of AI is that we can engage in things that are extraordinary. Our ability to learn and to think and to interact and to iterate with AI is profound, but we got to be careful, because along the way, things happen where our brain kind of slips into, what's the word? Maybe it's a more passive kind of perspective. You know, maybe we have cognitive cruise control. Mm-hmm. And that's problematic to me for one simple reason. This is what really, really is interesting. You know, we understand that obsolescence kind of goes hand in glove with innovation. You know, our 1 Tesla MRI machines in our hospitals now are old and antiquated. Everybody wants a 3 or a 5 Tesla to get better imaging. So we throw them away. We get a new one. Our phone doesn't work anymore. We get a new one. Our car, we get a new one. Whatever it is, we get a new one. That's the language. We get a new one. That's what my kids say. Something breaks, we don't try to fix it. We get a new one. Well, for the first time in history, human cognition itself is on the obsolescence chopping block. Human cognition itself is on the obsolescence chopping block. So can we apply that sentence, get a new one? No. It's a very curious thing. Now, my view of this is that the challenge to make AI and human cognition compete is a fool's errand. Maybe we should recognize their difference. And by recognizing their difference, we can see that both have different paths, different utilities. And what I come back to is a very simple idea of vision. We have 2 eyes, because we see in something called parallax, 2 perspectives. And what that parallax actually gives us is depth perception. So if you close one eye, you lose depth perception. You know, when you see a patient in the emergency room and they have a scratched cornea and they patch the eye and they leave the emergency room, get in their car and drive home, you got to warn them. You got to say, be careful, your depth perception is off. Mm-hmm. And what I think that AI does, AI is brilliant. AI is different. In fact, and maybe we can discuss this a little bit next time, I believe that AI is anti-intelligence. I believe that AI is antithetical to human cognition. It is a statistical model that sees a world that is vastly different from ours, and it's made up of a statistical matrix that is extraordinary, much more powerful than ours. And then we've got the human side that is the lived experience, that actually has time, that is the manifestation of all those individual bumps and bruises. It has an arrow of time. But those 2 act synergistically. When they come together, they give us a sense of almost a parallax cognition. Now, I know in the back of your head, you're saying Nosta should shut up now because he's going way too long on this. So I'm gonna take a slug of coffee and a drink. This is what the book is about. The book pushes us down these ways of saying, what is anti-intelligence? What does an apple look like to an LLM? What is 12,288 dimensions? How the heck can we even understand that? We can't. The answer is we can't. But we see an apple in 3 dimensions, with maybe 15 or 20 linguistic associations, such as Apple computer, apple a day keeps the doctor away. But an LLM sees it completely different. We can think of 5 dimensions as a, Todd, you talk about science fiction, right? We talk about multiple dimensional, multiple reality. We think of the Terrasec or the 5-dimension cube, right? We can't even imagine what 5 dimensions is, right? Our heads blow up. And then some physicist comes along and says, we did some work on string theory and that lives in 11 dimensions. And then our head blows up again. 11 dimensions? What the heck is that? Well, how can we have, and now it's not even 12,000, it's actually 25,000 dimensions in the matrix where these words or tokens exist. We can't force that into the human construct, and we can't take the human construct and force that into AI. They're different. They're antithetical. That's why I call them anti-intelligence. But together, they provide a very, very interesting worldview. And, those are the things that I kind of pick apart in the book. Sometimes it gets a little philosophical. Sometimes it gets a little mathematical. We even talk about the square root of -1 in the book. And those of you, everybody studied a little bit of math, right? We get to, what is it when x squared equals 9? The answer is 3, right? No, the answer is +3 and -3. Because a negative times a negative is a positive. So you go down this rabbit hole of imaginary numbers. Well, I've created this imaginary axis in the context of cognition. So the book is fun. It takes you on a journey. It's written in a very kind of conversational way.
I love it.
There we go.
The Borrowed Mind, Reclaiming Human Thought in the Age of AI. John, we're going to once again have you back to break out the book into 3 parts and kind of dig into that. And we'll have guests that will accompany us for each of the 3 parts. And if you're listening, the link to get this book is in the link. Once again, The Borrowed Mind by John Nosta. John, I appreciate you being on TWIRx today.
You know what? Just one quick question, Todd, before we go away. Education. Education is the bane of our existence. As pharmacists, we need to be educated. We need to update what we know. Patients need to be educated. Doctors, everybody needs to be educated. AI and large language models may be the single most powerful tool to educate ourselves, our patients, and our peers by using something that I call learner centricity. Patient centricity, every pharma company says everything we do for the patient, right? Well, I would say that's sometimes true, sometimes not. But in this instance, learner centricity is the powerful dynamic that I think we should jump in next, because that can change the game. I think that could be actually tied to a clinical endpoint of improving efficacy.
Thank you for that. That's a good place setter, and it'll get people to come back. We're going to be right back with another interview. Gil Bash is coming up next on TWIRx.
Feeling lost with the complexities of pharmacy accounting?
In pharmacy today, there's so many different, variables and issues that impact the pharmacy books, records, accounting, the profitability of the store, so forth. There's different components of pharmacy that have its own nuances from an accounting standpoint. And so it's tricky. There's no doubt about it.
Ready to take your pharmacy to the next level but don't know where to start? Sykes & Company is here to help. Introducing the RX Assessment. With the RX Assessment, the pharmacy CPAs and advisors at Sykes will do a deep dive into your accounting and tax situation and give you the action steps you need to take your pharmacy to the next level.
If you're interested in, working with a team who understands the industry and how the accounting and tax should really be in a pharmacy, this is your chance to get a under the hood check of what's going on and getting the feedback of any issues or concerns or, again, things we think you're doing really well with.
Get the financial checkup your pharmacy needs and head over to sykes-cpa.com or call 252-482-7644.
The Super Bowl of specialty pharmacy, I've given that name, and I've seen a couple other organizations give me that reference or say that reference. So I guess they're stealing my words. I'm headed to the Super Bowl of specialty pharmacy, Assembia 2026. Chris Antipas is in the studio. We're twerksing. How you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. Such a pleasure to be here with the
RX Podfather.
The RX Podfather.
That's right. Yeah, don't even get me started. Ted, you're back on TWIRx. This is not your first rodeo. Welcome back. It's good to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
What's the weather like today on this beautiful Friday as we get ready for the weekend? What's the weather up there like?
April showers, a little cool.
Yeah, absolutely. It's either 31 or
Unbelievable.
82
Unreal.
in southwestern Pennsylvania. It's the spastic middle-aged woman going through menopause or something
That's
like that.
right.
It's just
We don't know what we're going to get. We're just going to
We're
be
gonna get-
kind. Just
God
be
bless.
kind.
God bless my wife. It's like just starting to happen. So we're edging into that realm. We got 3 grandkids. I'm going to be 54 in the summer. Like I'm starting to get there, and it's not fun. I don't like it. I do not like it. Hey, today's episode is brought to us. This segment is brought to us by Perigon and Perigon Pharmacy 360, complex therapies, rare capabilities, personal care. I have been watching this thing grow for 10 years. And I know you don't know how much I pay attention to you, Chris, but I'm so proud of you. You're from Pittsburgh. You're what do they call it? Multi-patient. I think Dr. Erin Albert said that. She wrote a book called I think it was pharmacists that are doing multiple things.
Sure.
They're entrepreneurial, and you definitely fit that mold. But proud of you, buddy.
Appreciate it, man. The feeling is mutual. Trust me. It's just amazing. We got all this activity going on in southwestern Pennsylvania.
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh is where it's
Pittsburgh and pharmacy. Shout out to Harry Travis. He's going to be part of our Symbia coverage, which we're going to be talking more about today. But he and I have said that we'll fight people in arguing of where did specialty pharmacy start, and it was in Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh for sure.
Do you
There's no
agree
doubt
with that,
about it.
Ted? What side of the fence are you gonna? You have to join one of the sides. Is it Orlando or was it Pittsburgh?
I'm pretty sure it was Pittsburgh, and then it migrated south.
That's right.
I guess the argument, the other side is Orlando.
Yeah.
And it makes sense because it's like that one pharmacy hooked up with a FedEx runway that they were actually pretty close to. This is part of the story. I don't remember the name of that pharmacy, but everybody's
I'm pretty sure it was CuraScript.
Okay.
And it was Donnie Howard and Dom Meff that they founded CuraScript, and they just liked to golf. That they wanted to go somewhere where they can golf year round. And they went to Orlando. I think I've heard the story from the horse's mouth. That's actually what happened. So
and even though that's a nice story, and I like that. And by the way, just as back reference, the Meffs, they're an amazing family. Meff Senior and I worked together, God rest his soul, at WellMedRx in the pharmacogenomics project that he ended up selling to UPMC Enterprises. That family, the Meff family, nobody knows because they're not like it. They don't want to be out there. Like they just want to do their work and build their business, but they have had impact on, they've had impact on millions of people. And in Don Meff Sr., he taught me so much about just business and healthcare business more specifically. And he said, if you're in healthcare business, you have a higher, just because he's very Catholic, and he's like, when you're a priest and you're overseeing people and you're protecting people and you're a shepherd, you have a higher calling. Well, if you're in healthcare, if you're a nurse, if you're a publicist, if you're in research and clinical, you are now held to a higher standard because you're impacting people's freaking lives.
Yeah.
And I love that about him.
Yeah, that's what we say. We talk to our team members about the responsibility that you have. And it's something that you have to accept and embrace. You know, everybody out there that has a job, a very important part of it is you have to earn a living and you got to take care of your family. But when you're in healthcare, it's a responsibility. And if we can't meet those basic core elements of the responsibility, then you can't be in healthcare. You got to get out.
That's very true. We see that in our own pharmacy space, and there's always been good and bad. And we didn't even introduce Ted Mills. I'm so sorry. I cannot believe this. We're getting way too excited here on TWIRx. Ted, share with our listeners who might not be watching us on YouTube or LinkedIn, share if they're just listening, a little bit about yourself, where you're at, and give us an overview of Perigon Pharmacy 360.
Yeah, thanks. So my name is Ted Mills. I'm the CEO of Perigon Health, which is the parent of Perigon Pharmacy 360. I'm actually based here in Michigan, but our primary pharmacy location is in Pittsburgh. That's where Chris and I met a few years ago. We have a secondary location in Southern California. We're a 50-state licensed pharmacy. We have capabilities to do the most complex programs all the way down to specialty light programs. We service PBMs, manufacturers, 340B clinics. So there really isn't anything that we haven't done or can't do. I'm really proud of that. Being a smaller specialty pharmacy, we really have leaned heavily into, which was my background, into technology and really focusing on the patient experience. And by putting the patient first and trying to improve the support that we can provide them using technology, we built out a team and a platform that really enabled us to impact pharmacy operations as well. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that over the course of today and in the coming days as well. So we're really proud of the fact that our time to fill is very low. We can eliminate gaps in care, I think, real efficiently. I'd put our pharmacy performance up against anybody in that regard from an operations perspective. And I think the implementation of the technology that we've demonstrated and the type of data that we can produce, the persistency that we can impact is, I would say, top notch if I had to put ourselves up against anybody in the peer group. So my background, just by the way, is not, I don't have the depth of experience and knowledge that Chris does. Chris is, he's my go-to guy. He's the pilot of the plane. I'm a little bit of the navigator, I think. My background is really kind of from a personal experience perspective. I had over a very condensed period, several family members in different use cases and diseases that I saw interact with the healthcare system and their primary care or their specialty care, whether it's cancer and oncology, and the medications. And it just left me to kind of embark on this mission. And fortunately, I was fortunate enough to meet with Chris. You mentioned that he's very entrepreneurial, and it really wouldn't have worked with anybody else. Somebody that's capable of thinking outside the box and has subject matter expertise, willing to take risks and really think differently about how we approach at scale, like patient care. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. But it was truly from my experiences that I wanted to get into the space to help support people and get them to a better place. And then I learned through the School of Hard Knocks specialty industry and how challenging it is. And it only reiterated my belief that there's a lot of improvement to be had. And I like to think that we're at the tip of the spear in terms of implementing that technology, and really excited to share, with your listeners and with attendees at Assembia, how we could maybe help them out.
He said the word of today is Assembia.
Assembia.
So freaking excited. Shout out to Chris Benz and the Assembia crew. They have been hard at work at putting together a conference that is super hyper focused on the business of specialty pharmacy, and it just exudes exactly that. And the food and the atmosphere and the whole vibe. I love Assembia. I think that's one of my top 3 favorite conferences.
Yeah, it's a top shelf experience. It kind of sets the standard for what a conference should be, the quality. I mean, they've got the top most knowledgeable experts across so many different areas of the industry that come there and share information, share knowledge. Got the top organizations out there to learn from and to buy from and to do business with, and the manufacturers all have their key folks there. It really is the industry of the year for the specialty pharmacy space.
Yep.
Sure, without a doubt.
The one part of it that I am always most excited about, I don't get enough time because I'm always on the showroom floor preparing for interviews, but I'm going to try to make a couple sessions on artificial intelligence impact on specific things. And there are 5 presentations over the entire Assembia day that are all focused on something to do with artificial intelligence. And I think they split it. I can't remember the names of them right off the top of my head right now. However, one of our focuses of our 3-part series is going to be, how does AI impact specialty pharmacy specifically? Like what aspects, just to set the stage, what aspects of AI have you seen impact specialty workflow or something in that space?
So we're at Perigon, we're using these latest advancements in technology to help in a few ways. It's got to be used. One of the major advantages is digesting and making sense of large data sets and making recommendations on what types of interventions are necessary on those data sets. So whether it's ingesting medical data from the EMR, combining that with data that we get from patients and from our pharmacy management system, and then identifying opportunities to help our patients. That's one of the areas that we're using it, because there's so much more that the data has buried within it than we can assess just by looking at it ourselves. When you use AI to interpret really large data sets at a patient level, you'd be really blown away to see the insights that are revealed and the opportunities that are really revealed for us to do something about, because we're here to take care of our patients. We're here to also support the interests of all the parties that are focused on that patient care, because you have the payers, you also have the manufacturers, you have the providers, and you have us. We're all kind of centered around this patient. Everyone wants the best for that patient, but also they all have their own objectives with their business models that surround that patient. And so we're really excited to talk about what we're doing, but that's kind of a high level example of how you can really use AI to better a patient experience, but also deliver meaningful impact for the business of pharmacy.
Ed, I don't want to put you in a specific corner of a specific type of personality, but I would lean more to some of your ideas around the CFO position or the money side per se. But the reason why I'm mentioning that is how is AI now impacting running a business in comparison to maybe drilling down into the clinical or the treatment? What part of AI in specialty pharmacy are you most excited about?
Well, I think AI is going to go over a course of time. There's going to be early adoption, and I think it's going to go in phases. And I think what you're seeing right now is in the specialty space, you've got a lot of legacy pharmacies, large pharmacies that are on legacy systems. And it's a labor-intensive business. When you talk about patient care coordination, insurance verification, prior authorization, in this particular industry, there's a lot of human touch. And I think what you're going to see, and we are seeing, is companies adopting point solutions they put on top of their legacy pharmacy management systems to help with all of those things. So virtual agents to help contact patients, do the prior authorization, do the insurance verification. I think that's most companies, if they're not doing it right now, will be this year, I think, really examining how to implement that. So from a finance perspective, this year, I think is going to be the next 12 months. I would characterize it most likely as implementation, experimentation, and like cost savings, trying to drive some more dollars to the bottom line. The industry, though, is primarily driven by the gross margin line. And so the impact will be relatively quick. It'll be beneficial. But I think for most, at least the pharmacies that we speak to and our pharmacy, I think the idea that you can grow a business without having to add more and more people to support these complex programs is really going to be the benefit of these agents. The really exciting part, though, is Chris alluded to, which is, and what we're doing at Perigon, is our technology platform sits on top of a pharmacy management system where we've aggregated the most advanced point solutions and developed our own intellectual property that we can incorporate that technology into clinical care. So we can automate development of clinical care plans. We can automate tracking medication therapy. We can really enable these highly talented pharmacists to take on a bigger role and not have to do the paper pushing and script filling, that's takes a lot of their time. That's where I think we're most excited about. And I think, we're going to talk a little bit about other aspects of just the level of information that we can pull together on a cohort basis. I think manufacturers today look for data from their pharmacies And I think we're just scratching the surface. The type of data they're looking for now is like status, like what's the status of my drug in these patients? And I think we're going to be, as an industry, blown away over the course of the next 12 and 18 months related to the level of real world evidence that we can generate on a cohorted basis. So we can get super specific on a patient cohort and overlay that information, real world evidence relative to their medication efficacy, on top of EHR data that we're scraping and pulling from across the country. And it's going to produce really actionable and amazing insights, not only from the manufacturer, but also from a clinical support perspective. And I think that's where we're going to see the most exciting advances, at least in our application.
I have an imagination based on the patient. Amber Pharmacy was my first experience where I got to go to their new location, like Agostino, and he had us come in because we were trying to evaluate some workflow and trying to sell him a pharmacy management system. And we signed a BA and we were able to walk around. And so I got some time with some of the techs, and the techs were asking, I didn't get to see who the patient was, but I could hear them throughout the call center. They were asking specific questions to the patient on the phone, and it was sweet. They were being, it was almost like they treated them like they were a friend, and they knew who they were talking to. So, but I could hear them weaving in very specific things. So they would be like, "Hey, Julie, it's, how are you? Hey, how's your dog doing?" Because they had notes on the screen. It's like, "Hey, have my dog." And they're like, "Oh, my dog, it's getting better, blah, blah, blah." And then she'd be like, "Hey, so how are you feeling today? Like on a scale from 1 to 10, where's your pain?" "Oh, I guess it's a 6, blah, blah." All right. So this is happening 15 years ago.
Sure.
If I had all that data of any patient that was on the XYZ NDC, and after 90 days, everybody's pain ratio was coming in on an average, it was coming in at a 5 or a 6. Like if I had put AI on that, I could call up as a pharmacy tech just to check up on my patient, and I could be something like, "Hey, Chris, how you doing? Oh, I'm okay. In a little bit of a pain. Would you say your pain's like right about around, or like around a 5, 6? Yeah, I guess, something like you're banging out the down." Now I'm able to like be more personalized and more precision and more really squeezing the humanity out of the data. Whereas I know there's financial sides of this, but if I'm designing something based on AI to take care of patients, if I had control of the money, don't give me the money. We'll lose the money. But if you did, I would like squeeze the humanity out of it, where I could be like, this data is telling me that millions of people that participated in the survey said this, and this about this specific medication. Like, and now you're calming people, because when I'm on the phone with you, I feel like you're empathizing. I feel like you get it.
Well, it's all about a relationship. And as Ted kind of alluded to, our industry, it's hard to operate a pharmacy. There's a lot of manual stuff that we're doing. And the manual stuff takes away from our ability to actually do the stuff we want to do. There are things we have to do in order to generate the revenue out the door by shipping these drugs. But we view AI and how we're incorporating it into our operations as removing the noise and just presenting our team with the things that need their attention, taking away the manual tasks that just take up time and money. So the experience you're describing is very achievable when you don't have the burden of calling 1,000 patients today and just trying to churn out product. It's going to be better received from the patient as well, because we're not suggesting that you replace human beings with bots that talk to patients. You can still have humans interact with your patients. But the question is, what are they talking about? Because if you can use the technology to extract the stuff and maximize efficiencies on these repetitive manual tasks, then you can save the good stuff for the actual human interaction. That's kind of our vision for it. It very much aligns with what you're saying, because for years, pharmacies have been doing all of this work manually over the phone, and it's really difficult to do it efficiently, do it effectively, and handle the business side of pharmacy that we have to focus on in order to survive.
Ted, are you a science fiction movie guy? Do you like science fiction movies?
I do.
So I loved Edge of Tomorrow with Tom Cruise, where they had the exoskeleton robot
it's
thing.
a good movie.
So I think of AI like that. Like, I don't think AI is going to take anything over, really. I mean, maybe it will, and who knows. But in my realistic view, it's putting on this robot suit on top of the pharmacist and making you more powerful, because you're able to not only access data faster, but you're better organizing data. You're better seeing patterns quickly. And then you're giving that back to the pharmacist who's passionate about that specific medication treatment anyway. It's like, I think, or I already know, I've talked to so many pharmacists that are telling me this, but when they're nerding out with AI behind them to really, really dial in, it's like, that's cool. Like, I see it as an enhancement. I don't see it as
Totally
like
agree.
replacement.
Totally agree.
Yeah. I want them to make another Edge of Tomorrow movie, by the way.
That's a good movie.
I like that movie.
You know, I think it's going to enable the pharmacist to actually take on, I don't want to say more meaningful, because I don't think that's right, but in a more efficient role within healthcare as a whole, because we're going to be able to get access to information that providers actually have on a real-time basis. And we're going to be able to identify trends, real-world trends, based on real-world evidence quickly. And then we can share that with folks real efficiently that are the primary care source. And I think that's an exciting part of it too. Like, our platform enables us to communicate with doctors right in with their EHR, so we can send real world evidence about how a drug's performing to a doctor, so they're prepared, prior to a visit. So that's only going to get better, and the data is only going to get richer from patients as as biometrics, digital wearables they're only going to improve over time. So the Oura rings are an amazing example, and the adoption of the Oura rings in the younger generation is pretty significant. And that information is going to start being incorporated into these data sets as well. So there's exciting times ahead. I think not all patients are the same. I think with 2 years ago, all patients we know aren't the same, but from a data perspective, they're kind of the same. But we're able to drill down and identify a newly diagnosed patient that's 25-year-old is going to be responding potentially differently to a new therapy versus maybe a 50-year-old that's been battling this particular condition for 15 years and has tried 4 or 5 different therapies. And pharmacy should have different strategies about handling those patients differently, because the critical time on these new medications, if you're onboarding a patient for the first time, is that first 30 to 90 days. That's when you lose patients or you gain patients, and that's where we can really have a significant impact. But that's all enabled by technology. Otherwise, it's just, it's not realistic. You don't have enough hours in the day to be able to, and you don't have the availability of the data to empower the clinical pharmacist to be able to, help support these people. But today you can, and I think that's only going to get better and better and better, and it's going to be amazing for the patient. And we talk about AI too. I don't think it's the right term almost. I think it's like real intelligence. We're actually getting real information. The AI is helping us overlay intelligence from other systems really quickly and rapidly. But we're able to generate real intelligence really quickly, complement that with artificial intelligence to do real clinical work that hasn't been done at a level before.
Yeah, I see big opportunities coming. I also see the board of specialties starting to grow outside where they are now. Very specific disease state, dig in and especially processes and understanding and relevance and that, like, even in podcasting, that's what I want to bring. I want to bring to the market where you're really dialing into very, very specific things happening, so that a pharmacist could really like brush up on something that you've been studying. Something that is getting a lot more attention, and we're going to be focused on it, is women's health specifically. So give us some background in your experience, Chris, as a pharmacist, but then with Perigon 360, not that you're singling out women, but but there's specific things happening to women that aren't happening to men, and it's developing not only opportunity, but the advantage that our patients have, women patients have now. 64% of all of our pharmacists are women.
Right.
So now you have women who understand what's going on in your uterus or your periods or getting pregnant. Like, I love that. I love that we have an opportunity to become just a little bit more empathetic from an understanding perspective. But then I have heard other stories that female gynecologists are like harder, like like they're not as gentle. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that women's health is getting a lot of attention lately. I literally just had a conversation yesterday. I was at an advisory board meeting, and we were talking about women's health and the progression and the challenges that hormone balances or imbalances have on the total picture, including mental health. We were really zeroing in on mental health and women's health related to that. There's a real opportunity, but it comes down to Ted's point about having a strategy customized to a patient. This is really where we've been relegated to cookie cutter approaches.
Right.
Like, this is what we do for this, and it's going to be good for a lot, but we know that it can't be good or great for any one person because we can't make it that specific. It's just impossible for us to do it. So I think technology leading to the ability to customize something for an individual patient is going to be really key. In my conversation with payers, they're very open and interested in exploring ways to support women specifically. When we were talking again about hormones, it's like, how many women are actually getting their hormones tested? You can do a saliva test and have a litany of your estrogens, progesterone levels, testosterone, talking about testosterone in women and how they're not getting adequate. Women need to have levels of testosterone. It's not like testosterone is the man,
Right.
The male hormone, and it's not for women, and vice versa with estrogen. Same deal on the men's side. We need some level of estrogens in our body. But, we're looking at how do we bring an individualized approach for each patient, understanding where they are in their care journey, supporting them, and not putting them into a box. Well, this is just how we take care of the patients with this diagnosis, and that's the best that we can do.
He said box, and there is now a new device out. I don't know if you guys heard about this. I think this was out on Pharmacy Times a couple weeks ago, that is being inserted under people's skin that will have a multitude of different substances in it that will inject on demand based on the technology of reading. And I'm like, that's like the future pharmacy is going to be like partially embedded into you.
Well, we got 3D printing of drugs.
Yeah.
The future is exciting and scary at the
yeah.
same time. It's a combination of both of them. And I think that this is part of our responsibility, is to drive it. Right. What do we want it to look like? Because we can come up with a bunch of ideas, but what is in the best interest of those patients? And I don't want to sound Pollyanna. I mean, because we do talk a lot about patients, but then when we look at the industry really does center around money in a lot of ways, unfortunately, at the expense of patients and patient care. So those of us that really do want to run successful businesses as a side effect of taking care of patients, we got to make sure that our voice is heard. We got to be out there. We got to be the ones driving the industry so that we don't just talk about patients, but then act differently for purely financial interest.
Great. Absolutely. All right. Mr. Joe DePietro has been on TWIRx so many times. I really appreciate him. He heads up McKesson.
I think it's DePinto.
DePinto. Yes. I've said his name wrong before. I'm so sorry, Joe.
Take again.
I just get too excited. So they're going to be on the show at McKesson. Mm-hmm. He's focused on the advancement of cell and gene, and I'm going to be asking about how he thinks AI is going to impact that part of it. But you guys are also going to be participating in kind of that subject, and that is a segment of pharmacy that is so kind of confusing in some ways, because is it an ever-changing component? Is it an ever-changing compound? Is it an ever-changing? Is it also customizable? Like, give us some overviews in what you've seen happening in cell and gene too, and what you think of that.
Yeah, I mean, cell and gene, it's obviously the cutting edge. A lot of pharmacies want to be in that space. We have some experience in the gene therapy space. It just takes specialty pharmacy to another level of infrastructure that's necessary, of expertise that's necessary. Infrastructure in the case of, these are living organisms, the drugs themselves, so they're viral vectors. You've got to store them ultra frozen. So you've got to have an infrastructure to support distribution of ultra cold chain products. Mm-hmm. And these products are typically infused. So you have this dynamic of, is it the specialist that's buying and billing the product? It's under the medical benefit, and just the whole care coordination process. And then, of course, the safety factors. Sadly, we've seen with some gene therapies, they have led to some patient deaths. And so I certainly am far from an expert on the topic, mm-hmm. but I do think that it's kind of, you got to tread lightly going into the space, because we talked about earlier, the responsibility that we have to make sure that we take care of our patients and we step up to the plate. These are massive amounts of money that are being spent on these products. So, I mean, we're really looking at it to see too, how can we integrate technology to help support the process and help support patients, because typically in a lot of these conditions, we're dealing with children, at least in some of these gene therapies, we're dealing with pediatric diseases, genetic diseases or disorders. And you got the parent dynamic. People are scared, they're concerned. So how are we communicating with the family? How are we keeping them informed? They're kind of hoping and praying that this therapy will save their child. And so we're, like I said, we're by no means experts, but we do have some experience and we have a perspective on it, and we have some capabilities within Perigon that can support helping patients get access to these totally mind-blowing and life-altering treatments.
Ted, what in the space of cell and gene has complicated maybe like your forward thinking of business model? Is there anything that you have to dial into that is more prohibitive to being successful in that space in comparison to other medications?
Well, it's a completely different experience. It's a very labor intensive dispense, I would say, to get a patient on therapy. There's a lot of people involved. So coordinating that activity is just labor intensive. I don't think, when we talk about operational efficiency and those types of applications for AI, I don't think it's necessarily relevant for that type of product, because it needs to be it's a different experience. Relative to impacting from a manufacturer's perspective, though, manufacturers are required to monitor these patients for 15 years. So I'll say dispense, but infuse a product into a 7-year-old person or 8-year-old or whatever it might be. You're required to get real world data and real world evidence on that person over time. And so pharmacies are typically very transactional. I ship you a product, you maybe stay on therapy for a while, you leave, and then, we get rid of your data after a certain amount of time because you've moved on in life. And I think going forward, the technology is going to enable us to really monitor that patient with real data coming out of EHR and medical records over time. And we can create a different type of relationship with that person in a really efficient manner that enables a pharmacy to provide value to a manufacturer and follow through on helping them develop and implement and analyze and distribute that information over the lifetime of that drug. I don't think there's a lot of pharmacies that can do that today. That's not super manually intensive. So you got to price that into the dispense. I think we've built I'll say a better mousetrap to be able to do that over time. That's pretty impactful. And so I see the application from, technology more in that part of it from a pharmacy perspective. The drug development side, I can't speak to. I'm sure it's crazy acceleration on the drug development side because of the use of these models. But from a pharmacy perspective, that's where I think the biggest impact can be that we're leveraging right now.
I'll just add to that you also have to be mindful of the finance side of cell and gene therapy. So that's a category. We won't go into detail on it, but
yeah, don't get me started. The working capital alone is crazy.
It's just an interesting dynamic. Very interesting how you got to navigate. There's still an acquisition of product. It's very expensive. There's still a payer. There's still a time to be paid. And so it requires a different approach to the finance side of how you handle cell and gene. So establishing that infrastructure, which we've gone through and we have established, it's a very important consideration.
That's something I wouldn't have thought of, but yeah, holy cow. That's why when I hear comments and I understand the passion behind the comment, we'll hear people in the community pharmacy space and PBM reform and in the advocacy, and even some of the legislators who are agreeing with the sentiment. There's nothing specialty about specialty, and I'm like, guys, listen, don't get me started. I'm Mr. PBM reform. Like, I'm ready to, fight, but I'm also very realistic where I'm like, I'm not even a pharmacist. I'm not a technician. I'm a publicist. I'm a documenter of podcasting. And I've learned how complex specialty pharmacy is depending on what medication it is. Does it have REMS reporting involved? Is it a cancer medication? Is it, well, I mean, it's delivery, temperature control, follow-up data. I mean, Ted just said 15 years of data. Like, come on. This isn't just
Yeah, I think that that is the immediate, and I've had those conversations. I mean, I've got community pharmacy blood that runs through my veins. I own a community pharmacy, right? Yeah. And I think there are some therapies where it could be argued that it's kind of a quote unquote glorified mail order. But I agree with you. I think if we're to do specialty the right way, then it really is different. Yeah. It really is a different experience. And I would say even in a community pharmacy, you can argue that what makes a community pharmacy special. And I've had these conversations with my colleagues. It's like, we really, to an extent, you could replace standard community dispensing with robots. They can check a prescription. Yeah. We now see that AI can do order entry. They can enter the prescription. They can evaluate whether it's an appropriate dose. They can look at the patient's history and say whether this drug makes sense. They can look at drug interactions. They can actually physically look at the product and confirm, oh, this is supposed to be lisinopril. This is what's in it. It's lisinopril. They could effectively, robots can do that better than a human being could do it, arguably. So the real question is, what should we be doing to take best care of that patient? And if in specialty we do that, then it really is special. And just like in the community pharmacy, there's an opportunity to do so much more than we're doing today. And you see that it is being done differently in different pharmacy settings. There are pharmacies where the pharmacists, unfortunately, are relegated to robots. And you have other pharmacies where they're delivering meaningful patient care. And sometimes that patient care doesn't have anything to do with the drug. It does have to do with their dog. It has to do with the support, the emotional support that we provide our patients to help them get through their care journey, which can be daunting and challenging for them. So I don't want to cut short the value of the human interaction. And I think the pharmacies that embrace that responsibility, they really are doing something meaningful, whether it's specialty or not. I think that's the opportunity and the responsibility that we have.
Yep, absolutely. Excited. This means I'm going to see you guys and not next week and the weekend after. That's like 2 weeks. I'll see you. That's right. That's crazy. Ted, you excited about Vegas? I can't stand Vegas. I always say this, been saying it forever. Put me in Florida, put me in Arizona, Los Angeles would be nice. Colorado, for goodness sake. I love when they have conferences. But Vegas, I mean, once you're in Vegas and I get to be around the people that I love hanging out with, pharmacists and business people, it's wonderful. But to get there and to be in the midst of...
We should have good weather, though.
Yeah.
It should be decent. we're gonna be, if we can spend some time outside. I mean, you're gonna be.
Yeah, I would like to go outside. I want to be on a rooftop bar somewhere.
Let's make that happen.
Yeah,
Let's go get lost one day.
Ted knows all the good people in pharma that could
It's on you, Ted. You got to make that happen.
Yeah, we'll make it happen. I love Vegas. I think it's great. I think the surrounding area is beautiful too. If you want to get out or golf or go hiking, it's 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away. It's great.
We're gonna do something different.
Let's do it. Let's do something crazy. Let's get out there. Hey, Assembia 2026. Come see us, booth 1805. It's the podcast press booth. If you haven't signed up for participation in the 3-part series, if you want to talk about women's health, AI and specialty pharmacy, cell and gene therapy, it's Joe DePinto, not Joe DePietro.
That's what I thought. It was Joe DePinto.
Joe, I'm sorry, buddy, but he always shows up. He's always on the show. He's always at the Assembia. So shout out to Joe. Maybe we can get Joe to pay for our drinks. Hey, Joe.
Coming for you, Joe.
We're coming for you, Joe.
Thanks.
Hey, welcome back to This Week in Pharmacy, someone that I've connected with on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn as a professional networking tool. It's brought so many people to the network. It's brought intelligence to the network. It's brought new hosts to the network and our clients. Dr. Andy Krett, it's great to have you on TWIRx. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.
All right, Andy. So one of the aspects of medicine and therapy, especially when it comes to mental health, is how our pharmacists are starting to learn a lot more about the endocannabinoid system, how to leverage psychedelics possibly in treatment, or how that could give them another tool, especially for conditions like PTSD with our veterans. So you have a survey. You're going to be collecting information to really do exactly what we're talking about, which is learn more about the science and get information from the providers that are out there that are in the trenches. So give our listeners a short overview of this survey and how they can get involved.
Sure. So the survey, the Psychedelic Pharmacist Association is working with Dr. Dan Kruger of the University of Michigan. And this is one part of a study that we're doing on the current state of psychedelic education in pharmacy schools. So we're kind of trying to scientifically evaluate our assumption that curriculum is not including psychedelics, even though they've kind of been in pipelines for quite some years. We're just trying to poll practicing pharmacists to see where they are. We have other parts of the study where we've asked schools of pharmacy to check their curriculum, and then we're also checking their website. So really hope for folks to participate with that.
So we're going to have a link to the survey in the show notes. So listeners, if you're driving, if you're jogging, don't worry about it. Get somewhere safe. Get access. I'm also going to post this on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and our LinkedIn, so that people know that it's out there, that it's something that they should be involved in. We want their feedback. I don't necessarily want the consumer's feedback. They don't understand. They don't, and I don't even want people that aren't tied back to pharmacology. Like, I'd much rather have, if I think of all of our providers, unless you're a physician that has really been digging into psychedelics specifically, I want the pharmacist to chime in because of interactions and metabolization and allergicness or whatever else might come into this. But share with our listeners some of the work that you've been doing, and also, the tie back to the Psychedelic Pharmacists Association too.
Sure. So my primary work is in the cannabis space. I'm a practicing pharmacist in the PA Medical Cannabis Program. And psychedelics have a lot of crossover in that they all went into Schedule 1 at about the same time. We said that there was no medicinal value to any of these substances and controlled them that way. Well, it turns out that we're finding quite a lot of potential when it comes to several of these substances. And we need to, really look at that as patients and people throughout are suffering from mental health care conditions. It's quite a high prevalence, and a lot of folks are running into being refractory to care, whatever we want to call that. They're having trouble with the current standard of care. It's not helping them, and there does seem to be some utility in some of these modalities for that. There is, stage 3 clinical trials for psilocybin, 25 milligrams. Coming out for treatment-resistant depression. The same company, that's actually two companies, the same company has it also in trial for PTSD and anorexia nervosa. We're looking at a few different psychedelics when it comes to seeing how they sort of amp up this neuroplasticity. And although that mechanism isn't fully elucidated, it is very interesting to look at. And it really doesn't go off of that mindset that we came through pharmacy school with, that mental health is related to a neurotransmitter imbalance. It is the way we go through the world that creates that neurochemistry. And if we're not working on the mindsets that got us into that neurochemistry, then we can't really move it forward. And there does seem to be some capacity for cannabis to help in the mental health space, although you really have to be careful when developing that right relationship. A lot of folks are finding we're seeing an increased prevalence of cannabis use disorder as it becomes more widely used. Psychedelics don't seem to have quite the same when it comes to a use disorder potential. They actually seem to help with a lot of the folks that are trying. One of the big studies was psilocybin for smoking cessation or things like that. I think I answered your question.
Yeah. I want, from your perspective and experience, when I hear pharmacists talking about psilocybin, THC, endocannabinoid system, I always think of administration. I think there's the smoking administration, vapor, there's the edibles, there's the topicals. Of course, they're using THC and topical, where you're drilling down into the pain right in the exact spot where you're kind of like messing with the nerves, and I love it. I just freaking love because it's not only the application and the disease state and the condition, but it's also administration. The way that a cannabis product, so you start digesting it, you're metabolizing it. I've even tried an edible, and it's a different type of experience than in smoking something that was like going right to my head, and so all of that knowledge comes back to the pharmacist, where they're like, so my question is, do you see psilocybin and THC moving into the compounding space so that we could customize therapy as we move through a condition, especially if it was like mental health, for example, and you're like, maybe they need a slight variation or a slight bit more, a slight bit less. But do you see a freedom of the provider to really kind of dial into the specificity of the patient?
The answer is I'm not sure. With the way that the programs are currently rolling out, a lot of what we would see a compounding pharmacist do is done by grower processors. But I also do know that there's cannabis practitioners that very much try to dial in each phytocannabinoid to their patient. And then if we could ease that in some way, ease the burden of trying to remember all of these things to take and compounding it into a single form, I think that could be useful. So there's definitely possibilities there. And the other thing to remember is that just because these things kind of exist in one space doesn't mean they're existing across the board. We have like 40 different cannabis markets. It's very different for patients as they try to go in each state. And the lack of federal clarity on any of these is just harming patients try to navigate the space, because they don't even have the assistance of healthcare. Healthcare is afraid to come out and say, okay, well, we're not just neutral. We even see the utility in this, because, that they're afraid of what the federal government might come back and say. And it's difficult because we don't have, there isn't a big money payday to help people engage with some of these substances that could be a lot more common. Just because a drug company is coming with a product that is going to be on the market doesn't mean that people still can't go buy psilocybin mushrooms from someone.
Right.
And trying to help people navigate those spaces, I think, a place where pharmacists could really be of assistance. That's what we do.
Yeah, the self-medication angle, I don't think that's a good long-term, solution. I think having a pharmacist to really become consultative and dialing in and making the recommendations based on the research and the experience that they have, especially like you, Andy, have really dialed deep into endocannabinoid system and starting to be specific for condition and weight and sex and like stage of life, and like this is a whole science in and of itself. I could see Board of Specialty start building certification for whatever category that they're gonna put psilocybin and cannabis, if they belong together. That's actually a follow-up question for you. Do you think that if you're learning and you're becoming a consultative pharmacist, is that a certification or is that an education that could go together, that would be in the same category?
There currently isn't any board certification. I will tell you that the nursing's organizations have created a specialization in cannabis, but it really hasn't come to the pharmacy realm yet. We haven't seen anything on kind of these modalities that are coming through state. They're not coming through the normal healthcare pipeline. They're coming through state organizations. Politicians seeing their constituents saying, we need this, and we need to figure out a way for it. So that's why we have 3 states now with a legal route to psilocybin. So, it really would be great for pharmacists to start understanding that as we see more and more states kind of jump onto that. As for education, they did a big Delphi study on what it would look like to put the endocannabinoid system and cannabis pharmacology into healthcare curriculum for physicians. They wanted 40 hours, and the big question becomes, where do you put it? What do you lose to do that? And I mean, it's an important discussion, but I also understand that it's where do you put it in. But if we don't have the endocannabinoid system really in pharmacy curriculum. I think it's getting better. I ask pharmacy students all the time, what do you know about the endocannabinoid system? Let's talk about it. And I'm starting to get better answers, like at least we'll talk about CB1 and CB2, but, really getting into the nuance of what it does to regulate people's homeostasis is still very much a specialized nuance.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. We can't wait to dig in more. I want to invite you back, Andy, on a follow-up discussion. I also want to give the listeners a heads up. Go to the psychedelicpharmacist.org website. Once again, that's psychedelicpharmacist.org. And then reach out to Andy. Last name is Krut. Andy Krut, Dr. Andy Krut. Just look him up on LinkedIn, reach out to him, ask questions. But Andy, promise you're going to come back to TWIRx.
Absolutely. It's been great to be here. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye.